Clint Eastwood arrived at a film festival when a young organizer stopped him. "Sir, this is an industry event. Are you sure you have the right location? Public screenings are downtown." What appeared on the screen 30 minutes later, and what 500 people did, left the organizer mortified. It was a Thursday evening in October 2019, and the Santa Barbara International Film Festival was opening its annual showcase with a special screening. The festival had been running for 34 years and had become one of the most prestigious film events on the West Coast, attracting filmmakers, actors, critics, and industry professionals from around the world. This year's opening night film was The Mule, Clint Eastwood's latest directorial effort. The film had been selected not just because it was excellent, but because Clint had agreed to attend the screening and participate in a Q&A session afterward. For the festival organizers, having Clint Eastwood at your opening night was a huge coup, the kind of thing that elevated a festival's reputation and drew media attention. The screening was scheduled for 7 p.m. at the Arlington Theater, a historic venue in downtown Santa Barbara. The festival had sent out invitations weeks in advance, and all 500 seats were filled with industry professionals, film critics, festival donors, and local filmmakers. Among the festival volunteers working that evening was Madison Cooper, a 24-year-old recent film school graduate who'd moved to Santa Barbara hoping to break into the industry. She'd volunteered at the festival for 2 years, working her way up from ticket scanning to credential checking at the main entrance. It was a position of responsibility. She was the first person industry professionals encountered when entering the venue, and her job was to verify credentials and direct people to appropriate sections. Madison took this job seriously, very seriously. She'd been given explicit instructions. This was an industry-only event, no general public. Anyone without proper industry credentials needed to be redirected to the public screenings happening at other venues around town. Around 6:45 p.m., as industry guests were arriving and Madison was checking credentials at the main entrance, an elderly man in casual clothes walked up to the door. He was wearing jeans, a button-down shirt, and a light jacket. He looked like someone's grandfather, perhaps a local resident who'd gotten confused about which screening was which. Madison stepped forward with her professional volunteer smile. "Good evening, sir. Can I see your industry credentials, please?" The man reached into his pocket, but before he could pull anything out, Madison's radio crackled. Another volunteer was asking her a question about seating arrangements. She held up a finger to the elderly man. "One moment, sir," and turned to respond to the radio call. When she turned back, the elderly man was still standing there patiently, but Madison had already made her assessment. Elderly, casual clothes, no industry lanyard visible, probably confused about the venue. "Sir, this is an industry event," Madison said in the helpful but firm tone she'd perfected. "Are you sure you have the right location? The public screenings are happening downtown at the Metro 4 Theater. You'll probably be more comfortable there." "I'm here for this screening," the man said calmly. "This screening is for industry professionals only," Madison explained, gesturing to the credentials hanging around her own neck. "Critics, filmmakers, festival donors, people who work in film. Do you have industry credentials?" "I have a pass," the man said, reaching into his pocket again. But Madison had already spotted what looked like a public transit bus pulling up down the street, and she made a decision to be extra helpful. "Sir, if you need to get to the Metro 4, there's a bus that can take you. The public screening starts at 7:30, so you have plenty of time. This venue is for the industry premiere only." The man stood there for a moment, looking at Madison with an expression she couldn't quite read. It wasn't anger. It was more like patience mixed with mild amusement. "I'm supposed to be here," he said again, "at this screening." Madison's radio crackled again. Someone inside needed help with a seating issue. She was getting frustrated with this elderly man who clearly didn't understand that he was at the wrong venue. "Sir, I'm trying to help you. This is not a public event. This is for people who work in the film industry. The director of tonight's film is going to be here, and it's a closed industry screening. You'll enjoy the public screening much more. It's the same film, just a more appropriate audience for you." "The director's going to be here?" the man asked. "Yes, Clint Eastwood himself, so you can understand why this is such an exclusive event. Now, if you'll excuse me, I need to help other guests. The man stepped aside to let other arriving guests pass. Madison checked their credentials: a film critic from the Los Angeles Times, a producer from Warner Brothers, a local filmmaker who'd won awards at previous festivals. All people who belonged at an industry event. The elderly man was still standing there, off to the side, watching. Roger Martinez, one of the festival's senior organizers and Madison's supervisor for the evening, came out to check on the entrance flow. He saw Madison efficiently checking credentials and nodded approvingly. Then he saw the elderly man standing off to the side. Roger walked over to him. "Mr. Eastwood, I'm so sorry. Were you waiting? Please come with me. We have a seat reserved for you in the front section." Madison, who was checking another guest's credentials, heard this and turned. She saw Roger treating the elderly man like he was important, calling him Mr. Eastwood and leading him into the theater. Her brain took a moment to process this. Roger had called him Mr. Eastwood. But that couldn't mean, no, Clint Eastwood was the director. He'd be arriving in a car, probably with an assistant, probably dressed more formally, probably... Oh no, oh no, no, no. Madison's face went white as realization hit her. She'd just told Clint Eastwood, the director of the film being screened, the guest of honor for the entire evening, one of the most legendary filmmakers in American cinema, that he was at the wrong venue, that he should take a bus to the public screening, that this event was too exclusive for him. Another volunteer saw Madison's face. "Are you okay?" I think I just... Madison couldn't finish the sentence. She felt physically ill. Inside the Arlington Theater, Roger was escorting Clint to the front row, where seats had been reserved for him and a few other special guests. As they walked down the aisle, several people recognized Clint and started applauding. Others turned to look, saw who it was, and joined in. Within seconds, the entire theater of 500 people was giving Clint a standing ovation as he made his way to his seat. Madison, still at the entrance, could hear the applause from inside. She knew what it meant. They were applauding the director. The director she'd just tried to send to a different theater on a bus. At 7 p.m., the lights dimmed. The festival director, Laura Chen, took the stage to introduce the film. "Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the opening night of the Santa Barbara International Film Festival. We are honored to present The Mule, directed by and starring the legendary Clint Eastwood, who has graciously joined us here tonight." More applause. Clint, sitting in the front row, gave a modest wave. "After the screening," Laura continued, "Mr. Eastwood will participate in a Q&A session. We're incredibly grateful to have him here." The film began. For the next 2 hours, 500 industry professionals watched Clint's latest work, a film about an elderly man who becomes a drug courier for a Mexican cartel, a character study about aging, regret, and redemption. Madison spent those 2 hours at the entrance in a state of mounting horror, replaying every word she'd said. "Are you sure you have the right location? The public screening is more appropriate for you. The director's going to be here so you can understand why this is exclusive." She'd said that to the director, to his face. She told Clint Eastwood that an event featuring Clint Eastwood was too exclusive for Clint Eastwood. When the film ended, the lights came up and the audience gave another standing ovation. Laura Chen returned to the stage with a microphone and a chair for the Q&A session. Clint joined her on stage. "Mr. Eastwood, thank you for being here," Laura said. "Before we take questions from the audience, I have to ask, how was your arrival at the festival? Did you find the venue okay?" The audience laughed, thinking it was a standard pleasantry, but Clint smiled slightly. "I had a small confusion at the entrance," Clint said. "A very helpful young volunteer informed me that I was at the wrong theater. She suggested I take a bus to the public screening downtown." The audience's laughter changed quality. People started realizing this wasn't a joke. "She was very insistent," Clint continued, "that this screening was only for people who work in the film industry. She explained that the director would be here, so it was an exclusive event. I tried to tell her I was supposed to be here, but she was quite sure I'd be more comfortable at the public screening." 500 people sat in stunned silence. Then, slowly, the reality of what Clint was describing sank in. A few people gasped, others covered their mouths. Several turned to look toward the entrance, where Madison presumably still was. Laura Chen's face showed horror. "Mr. Eastwood, I'm so sorry." "It's fine," Clint said, holding up a hand. She was young, she was trying to do her job, and she was very polite about it. She saw an old man in casual clothes and made an assumption. "It's an understandable mistake." "It's not understandable," Laura said firmly. "You're our guest of honor. Your name is on every poster, every program, every invitation. I don't know how." "She probably didn't look at my face," Clint said. "She saw an elderly person who didn't look like she thought an industry professional should look, and she made a judgment. It happens. It's a good reminder that we all make assumptions based on appearances." The audience was silent. This wasn't the Q&A they'd expected. This was a masterclass in grace under condescension. Roger Martinez, Madison's supervisor, slipped out of the theater and found Madison still at the entrance, looking like she wanted to disappear into the floor. "Madison," Roger said quietly. "That was Clint Eastwood." "I know," Madison whispered, tears starting. "I know. I'm so sorry. I didn't recognize him. I just saw an old man and I assumed. You assumed he wasn't important enough to be here. I was trying to be helpful. I thought he was confused. You thought an elderly person at a film festival must be lost or confused." Madison had no defense, because that's exactly what she'd thought. She'd seen age and casual dress and had immediately assumed this person didn't belong at an industry event. "I need to apologize to him," Madison said. "After the Q&A, I don't think you should approach him," Roger said gently. "I think you've done enough. What you need to do is learn from this. You judged someone based on age and appearance. In an industry that's already difficult for older professionals, you made it worse. That's something you need to think about." The Q&A session continued for another hour. Clint answered questions about the film, about his career, about his approach to directing. He was articulate, thoughtful, and generous with his time. Several times, he circled back to themes of aging and perception, about how society tends to dismiss elderly people as less capable or less relevant. "The character I play in this film," Clint said at one point, "is someone who everyone underestimates because of his age. They see an old man and they assume he's not a threat, not capable of complexity. That assumption is both the character's protection and his tragedy. We do this in real life too. We see age and we make assumptions. 500 people in the audience knew he was talking about what had happened at the entrance. After the Q&A, as people filed out of the theater, Madison waited by the entrance, hoping for a chance to apologize. But Clint left, through a side exit with Laura and other festival organizers, avoiding the main crowd. Madison went home that night and wrote a long email to Roger and Laura, apologizing profusely and offering to resign from her volunteer position. She explained that she'd been so focused on keeping non-industry people out that she'd failed to actually look at who was trying to enter. She'd made assumptions based on age and appearance, and she was mortified. Laura responded the next day. "Madison, your apology is noted. You're not being asked to resign. But you need to understand that ageism in the film industry is a real problem, and you contributed to it last night. Mr. Eastwood was gracious about it, but many others wouldn't be. Use this as a learning experience." The story spread through the film festival community quickly. Within days, it was being discussed in film industry circles. Within weeks, it had become a cautionary tale taught in film festival volunteer training programs. The time someone tried to turn away Clint Eastwood from the screening of his own film. Festival organizers across the country started emphasizing in their training, "Don't make assumptions based on age or appearance. Verify credentials, not demographics." Madison continued volunteering at the Santa Barbara Film Festival for one more year, then moved to Los Angeles to work in film production. She tells the story herself now, not as a funny anecdote, but as a painful lesson about ageism and assumptions. "I saw an elderly person and immediately assumed they didn't belong at an industry event," she said in an interview years later. "I didn't even look at his face long enough to recognize one of the most famous faces in cinema." That's how quickly age-based assumptions can override common sense. It taught me to look at people, really look at them, before making judgments about where they belong. Clint Eastwood continued making films into his 90s. Every premiere, every screening, every industry event, he dressed casually and arrived without fanfare. And everywhere he went, people remembered the story of the Santa Barbara volunteer who tried to send him to the public screening. It became a reminder that age doesn't determine relevance, that casual dress doesn't indicate lack of importance, and that the person you're dismissing might be exactly the person everyone else came to see. If this story of age discrimination at a film festival, of assumptions meeting reality, and of how one entrance confrontation became an industry teaching moment moved you, make sure to subscribe and hit that like button. Share this with anyone in the film industry, anyone who's been underestimated because of age, or anyone who needs to learn that you can't judge someone's importance by how old they look. Have you been dismissed because of your age? Share your story in the comments, and don't forget to ring that notification bell for more incredible true stories about grace in the face of ageism.